So what does the Asia Foundation really do in Mongolia on environmental issues?
The Asia Foundation has been in Mongolia for almost 20 years. And actually, the project that I run is the first time that the foundation anywhere. So we have 18 offices around Asia. And this is the first environmental program for the foundation, which is really important because if we do it well, maybe there'll be more of them around the world, around Asia. We work on an economic and environmental initiative. So that means we work on a project that we hope will help the economy and help the environment at the same time. And we do that mostly through focusing on water quality, river water quality specifically. So there are certain indicators in the environment that can tell you if the environment is doing well or not. You can look at air quality, you can look at water quality, you can look at biodiversity in flora and fauna, or biodiversity in animals. And what we look at is water quality. So there's so many indicators, we decided to focus on this one thing so we could do it well. We do that in two ways. The water quality program component of our project has a very hardcore science team. So they have 4 scientists. They have an entomologist, which is a bug expert, a hydrologist, a water expert, a chemist, chemistry, and a junior biologist. And they go out all summer long from the minute the rivers thaw in Mongolia until they freeze again, which is right around now, they come back home. And they do physical, chemical, and biological data collection. And what they do is collect bugs from the water. They test the flow of the water, the speed of the flow, the quantity, where the water was last year compared to this year. They do what's called a riparian zone habitat assessment. So they look at the water, or the area near the river's edge, to see if the bushes are eaten low in the grass. Does that mean it's grazed heavily? Is there animal feces in there? Are the cows pooing in the river? What does that mean for water quality? They look to see if there are communities living right on the water, and do they wash their clothes, drink from the water? Are there any other industry like bakeries or tanneries near the water? How does that impact the water? And then we've built up a database that tells us whether or not the water is healthy. So we can do that by measuring those things. We can also look at the bugs. Some bugs tell us if the water is healthy or not. So that's what we're working on, is water quality monitoring. The second component, quickly, is we have a whole curriculum that works around river monitoring, and we've introduced it to schools to the 8th grade. So the schools go out, the classrooms go out, and they get the water, and they look at the bugs, and they count the bugs, and they figure out if their water is healthy by those indicators. The other thing is the program teaches them that there are many indicators, or many stresses that humans cause on water, and there's climate change, which is a human impact. So there's grazing, there's industry like mining or tanning. There's also just human use. Are people washing their cars there? Are they using it for drinking water? Are they also using it for washing, like I said, their clothes? So it's also learning about climate change and what other impacts there are on water. So those are the two components. There's a hardcore science part, and there's an education in schools part.
Okay, my question is, how does coal mining affect the environment we live in, and how does it affect the soil around it?
Okay. Coal in general can have a huge environmental impact, from extraction of the coal to the burning of the coal for energy. There are ways that we can have clean coal, some people call that, and that is technology that's still evolving, but it's very important technology. Coal mining itself can have a heavy impact if not done responsibly. And a lot of times, unfortunately, it's extracted very quickly and without a lot of environmental impacts taken into account. So what can happen is the air quality can change because of the disruption of the soil to have the open pits. There can also be how do I put this in non-technical terms? The impact of mining, whether it's coal or gold, I guess I should say, it's not specific to coal, but the impact of the extraction can be the open pit, it can be desertification, it can be raising levels of dust and lowering the air quality because of the particulate matter that are in the air. It can be the energy used, because you don't just go in and dig it out with your hands, right? You have the trucks and the fuel and how that impacts the air. And also there's the processing of the coal, which is water intensive So it uses a lot of water and changes the quality of any water that's around. So there are multiple impacts, not just on the soil, for example, of coal mining. And then once you extract it, then what do? You burn it, right? So that's also very difficult, or has a heavy impact on the environment. The one thing that people are talking about with clean coal is, well, that's another question. Anyway, I'll just leave that. Mongolia, like many places, has various things that are impacting its waters. So in some ways, climate change right now is actually increasing the flow of rivers in Mongolia. And the reason why is the ice packs that melt, the glaciers that melt, that flow into the rivers are melting faster, so the water is actually increasing right now. But what that means is eventually they'll all thaw out, and then the rivers will truly dry up. So that's one concern, that even though the rivers are flowing and even flooding in some cases now, they will dry up eventually. Another thing is many rivers and streams, and not lakes, but rivers and streams in Mongolia and tributaries of rivers are what's called ephemeral bodies of water. And that means that they're on a cycle within just the Earth's cycle where sometimes they're there and sometimes they dry up. So I was in Dorna 2 weeks ago, and the Sum governor said to me, 60% of our streams have dried up. 60%. They're just gone. And I said, wow, that's amazing. And then he said, but we have 4 new ones, because they just appear sometimes. And that has to do, and I'm not a geologist, so I don't know how or why sometimes water is there and why it goes away. But sometimes there are ephemeral bodies of water, which means they just come and go with the cycle of the Earth. That doesn't explain everything, though. Some of it is climate change, and as the temperatures increase and the water evaporates more quickly, especially in a dry climate like Mongolia, if there isn't the support of, if they're overgrazed or the mining companies use them or communities drink from them and take them down to a minimal level and they're drying from climate change, then they'll go away. So that's a concern. We don't have any definitive data that shows that mining companies have made rivers dry. What they've done is lowered the quality of water. They've damaged these beautiful rivers that are, you could drink from. What they've done is sometimes the chemicals used either from ninja mining, artisanal mining, or large-scale mining has changed the quality where they're not safe to drink from anymore. Well, we actually don't have any data that shows that a river is dried up because of mining. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened, it just means we don't know. Then I think the other thing is dams. Sometimes they will, for hydropower, you can dam a river, and that obviously can dry it up if you don't let the water flow. That can dry the tributaries and what leads into other rivers.